Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to review Legion episode 4. And guys, I really love this episode. This would have been a perfect episode for me. Well, if there was one thing I think during this episode that took away from that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but other than that, I thought it was a great episode. I thought it would have been a perfect episode. But we open up with the character of Oliver Bird. Melanie Bird. Oliver is her husband. He's been missing. And we get Oliver Bird doing this monologue. And he just has this very interesting look. Kind of reminds me of Doctor Strange a little bit with the salt and pepper beard thing going on. But it's also important to note that Oliver Bird is being played by Jermaine Clement. And many of us know Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords. He does these comical bits, these kind of comical mixed with philosophical bits. And I think a movie in which he really came close to this character, did a similar thing, is in this movie called Dinner with the Schmucks. And I love that movie, a hilarious movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. But he basically gives this monologue about how violence, or human nature and violence, are synonymous. And that man, even in a time of peace, will find a means to attack himself through his anger and confusion, and that violence then is synonymous with ignorance. So we have human nature, violence, and ignorance. And I just thought that was excellent how he did that monologue on that. I really like the setting of it. He seems like he's stuck in the 1970s or something, because my assumption he went over, that was years ago, so he's still stuck in this early 1970s look and feel. He then goes on to talk about how as children we're educated and we learn from two types of stories. One is based on empathy and perseverance, whereas the other one is based on basically learning from fear. Jermaine Clements just did an excellent job in that scene. I really love. To me, that scene almost makes this a perfect show. But we move on. We get David, and David is still stuck in his head. We get to learn that David's moving along the astral plane, and this is because the astral plane, we've seen the astral plane depicted in many ways throughout the Marvel comic. When we look at Doctor Strange always travels along the astral plane, and to kind of define the astral plane in the Marvel universe, it's not another dimension. It's more like a parallel universe to our own, where your non-physical form is projected into a reality much like our own. So we've already kind of seen David experimenting with that, or use an ability where he can move along the astral plane. But this is important because David encounters Oliver Bird along the astral plane. They have this meeting, and we basically get Oliver Bird explaining to David that he is along the astral plane, but not only that the yellow devil can't hurt him now. He can't harm him. And we get this scene where the yellow devil's just kind of prancing around the boundaries of this room they're in. I guess that's symbolic of he can't enter into that space. That space along the astral plane. And Oliver Bird's explaining to David, hey, I'm glad to have somebody here with me. Everything's perfect here. I just can't seem to fix the cold. He's trying to have a drink. The drink is frozen. And we get to understand that Oliver Bird's his physical body is being held in cold storage. And Melanie Bird is actually at his body viewing it because she gets this kind of projection or vision from him, as David and him are moving along the astral plane. But we also kind of can understand why Oliver Bird, it's in his along the astral plane in his mind it's symbolizing the cold because his physical body's actually being subjected to the cold. So that's why he can't fix the cold. In his in his mind along the astral plane, he can't, So I just liked all of that. I like how they did that story. And David's trying to get out of the astral plane because he knows he has to get back to reality and get out of his body. And so Oliver Bird, shows him a way out. And so, as David moves outside of that space, now he's back. He's back. He's out. And he encounters Lenny again, and Lenny wants him to get out too because they can't do anything with him stuck in his head, and so Lenny's basically finding a way for him or helping to encourage him to get out. And she uses this kind of method where, she shows him that Sydney's in trouble, and so David's, getting the motivation and using his power to try to escape out of his mind. We also get this story going on with Tanami Wallace, the memory artist, and Sydney, and they're trying to get David to help David get free as well. They're trying to find ways to do it. They're trying to find information about his past memories, and one way they're able to get information is, we discovered through Tanami that Tanami can not only get information directly from people inside David's mind, but objects as well. So they find the radio in which David attacked Dr. Poole. Believed that David was searching for drugs, and Dr. Poole came in, discovered him, at the wrong time, and so David attacked him, and that's the information they're seemingly getting from this room. And they're also as well kind of going out doing this investigation to find David in the physical world. They come across David's girlfriend to seek information, and she lets them know that they're being watched and things like that. And they're able through their investigation, piecing everything together, to find Dr. Poole's house. And so they take Carrie with them, and Carrie's a very interesting character. Carrie is two Carries. We know there's Dr. Carrie who was helping David back at the Summerland facility. That Carrie has an ability to share his body with the other Carrie, who we know to be the other member of the team that she's kind of the action hero of the bunch. She does all the fighting. She was the character, the last of the main characters that we never really got a lot of backstory about. We didn't know a lot about them, but we know that they're two people in one, kind of similar to other Marvel, mutants we've seen that share bodies like that. And we get a little backstory on Carrie as she's explaining to Sydney, how, I believe it was an unborn daughter, and some kind of way there was Carrie, the boy growing up, and he thought he had an imaginary friend, but it was, actually the female Carrie who shared his body with him and would come out, of him at certain times. Also interesting enough, about it. Carrie, she doesn't have to eat or do anything. You know, the male Carrie, he takes care of all of that. She just comes out, kind of does her action sequences and helps him, and she goes back, and they kind of coexist in this kind of symbiotic type relationship, you know. Also very interesting about what we found about Carrie is that Carrie doesn't age unless she's physically in our world. So when she's physically outside of the body, she starts to age. Then, as long as she goes back in his body, she remains the same. And he's having this conversation with Melanie Bird, where he's concerned about, basically what's going to happen to her when he dies. So they're all headed to Sydney, Ptolemy, and Carrie, female Carrie, because she's come out of the male Carrie's, Dr. Carrie's body that she usually fuses with, to help them on this mission to help get David free. They visit Dr. Poole's house, Dr. Poole being the psychologist who had been treating David, where we was getting these skips in his memory, that they couldn't figure out what happened. Is like David was trying to suppress it, or someone was trying to hide those memories. But they get to Dr. Poole, and Dr. Poole's explaining to them, the situation of what happened with David, things like that. But then Dr. Poole's talking about how he wants to see David. And they find out that Dr. Poole's just trying to stall them. It's all a setup so Division 3 can get there with the eye and, retrieve them. And so they're kind of trapped in the house. It's like a lighthouse. And as they go into this, they go in to retrieve them. We get Carrie, the action part of Carrie, the Carrie duo. We actually getting to see her do some stuff, and so she dives out of a window. She's attacking and she's fighting and beating back everybody. The eye gets the autonomy, and he's able to does this kind of thing where he kind of grabs Tonemy's mind, and he's able to put Tonemy out for a time, but basically after which they are engaged in this fight amongst Division 3, we actually get Carrie. What's interesting about that scene is that when the female Carrie, when she's fighting these Division 3 soldiers, we cut back to the Dr. Carrie, and I just found this scene so hilarious. I was just dying laughing. He's doing the same move she's doing. He does this simulation, because it's almost like they have this psychic connection, as they're the same person essentially. But he's simulating all of her moves back at Summerland, and it's just hilarious because, even though he's doing this move, you can tell he doesn't have the training to do the move. So it just looks funny how he's going through the motion with I just was dying watching that, and I found that just so funny. But Carrie actually gets shot, and she goes down. Male Carrie goes down as well, because male Carrie apparently physically they feel everything each other feels, is seemingly know everything each other knows, but I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if then that means that if Carrie dies, female Carrie, that he will die, and vice versa, because in the earlier scenes, he did express his concern about if he died, would she die? But he didn't seem to be concerned about it working in reverse. Also, she doesn't have to eat. She's totally dependent on him. He has to eat. So I'm wondering if he can live without her, but she can't live without him. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Don't know that. I guess we'll get that in the upcoming scene. David, as he's been convinced by Lenny that Sid's in trouble. He is able to get out of his mind, but I need to go back, and because I missed a very important point, on what happened during the Oliver Bird conversation, and that is that Oliver Bird was able to also give David some information about how Lenny was actually Benny, a guy, not a woman, and that the memory of Lenny being a woman was not true reality. And so, as I said earlier in the episode, there was a part about this episode I didn't like. I'm going to go into that in the end and tell you my thoughts on that. But it was important that I brought that out, that Oliver Bird did let David know that it was Benny, a guy drug dealer and pusher who was a bad influence on David, and not Lenny, played by Aubrey Plaza, that we've been accustomed to during the show. So, David finally gets out right in time to help Sydney, Ptonomy, and Carrie deal with Division 3. He uses some of his powers, causes them to crash one of their vehicles, as we saw. And so David's kind of holding Carrie as she's been shot. We don't know if Carrie's going to live or die in this week's episode. An awesome episode. I liked it. There was the one thing I didn't like. That's us finding out that Benny or Lenny was actually Benny. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let me give some theories about why I think that happened and what it means, why I didn't like it, and why I thought that it kind of hurt this week's episode. But other than that, I thought it would have been a perfect episode. So we get that Benny or Lenny was actually a guy named Benny. That it wasn't Lenny. So that creates some problems for me in the continuity of this show, I think, because I just don't want this to turn out to be what I call the Scooby-Doo syndrome type episode or type show. And that is where they go through a lot of trouble to keep you guessing and keep everything mysterious to a point. It starts to just get to a ridiculous point. When I was a kid, I watched these Scooby-Doo episodes, and they start doing this thing where the guy would be wearing a mask, and then he'd have on two masks. They pull off a second mask, that kind of crazy stuff, where they're going through a lot of trouble just to throw you. And I hope that they're not going to try to take this route and just complicate this show just for the sake of complicating it beyond reason, because with Lenny and with us trying to figure out what reality is, I thought I thought they did a good job trying to let us know that Lenny did have to exist at some point because of the conversation she had with Sydney back at Clockworks, right? The mental hospital. But if they're going to say that Sydney wasn't talking to Lenny, she was talking to Benny or whoever she was talking to, then I'm concerned they're going to start to do this thing where they're going to probably keep us guessing and confused until the entire end of the entire show or the season, where then you're going to kind of have this thing or this situation where basically everything that's going on is happening in David's head, and every character and every person is just another manifestation of his powers and his abilities, If they do that, I can tell you right now, I will not like that. I think it's important that there be a clear distinction between reality and, the manifestations and projections David is, creating in his mind. Now, something that I did find very important, and I guess this is going into the kind of like speculation and prediction area, spoiler area, and that is, if Lenny isn't Benny, or if she's not the actual Benny, then who is she? Is she some type of creation, in David's mind, or is it an outside influence? Because my guess is, my speculation now is that the devil with the yellow eyes and Lenny are the same person, and that Lenny is part of the possession from the devil with the yellow eyes, that Lenny is how the devil with the yellow eyes influences David, you know. And some evidence to that is when David does come out of his mind and we kind of get Lenny in the background. If you look at Lenny's hands, they look like the devil with the yellow eyes hands. So I think it's pretty clear they're pointing to say that Lenny is the devil with the yellow eyes. And not Benny, and that this guy Benny did exist. What I didn't like about it, though, that messes up the continuity of the story, was that Sydney knew about Lenny. She talked about Lenny. So what reality is she in, you know? Because obviously she's in the same reality as Tonamy, Melanie Bird, Carrie, and the rest of the staff. Didn't like that part. So got to try to figure out what they're going to do with it for the rest of the show. But again, I don't want this to become, you know, I wanted it to stay away from the action so much and focus on David's mind, but I don't want this to become this thing where we just got to constantly be jumping through hoops to figure out this mystery. Other than that, great episode, guys. I really liked it. I hope you guys liked it too. Be sure and post your comments about what you thought you know, is going on with Lenny, if she's the devil with the yellow eyes. Don't forget to share this across social media with other people who love the Legion series. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and you should have by now. Shame on you. And don't forget to like. All right, guys. Until next time, take care.